Okay, welcome everyone to a new episode of Technique Tuesday. This week we're going to be looking at proper technique on the row and why cheating in this context actually makes biomechanical sense. Now with any rowing exercise, we're generally going to be performing some combination of shoulder extension, where you drive the elbows down and back, and scapular retraction, where you squeeze your shoulder blades together at the top. The shoulder extension component will be handled mainly by the lats, and the scapular retraction component will be handled mostly by the mid-traps. So even though many people think of the row as a back thickness exercise, it is in fact going to develop both back width and back thickness, an idea supported by research showing very high levels of lat and trap activation on rows. However, the way most people do rows creates a pretty poor resistance curve. At the bottom of the row, where you're by far the strongest, there's virtually no tension on the lats because the dumbbell is lying directly beneath the shoulder. You can contrast this with the top of a row, where you're by far the weakest, yet tension on the lats is the highest since there's now an external moment arm between the load and the shoulder. You've probably noticed this yourself. When you reach failure on a row, it's usually because the top part is so hard, but you might have actually been able to rep out another 10 or so reps in that bottom half. And this might mean your lats haven't actually fatigued, they just aren't able to complete the full range of motion because of that steep resistance profile. Now, in last month's issue of the Mass Research Review, Greg Nuckols offered using momentum as a potential solution to this problem. If the dumbbell doesn't have some momentum, you can't really grind out those last few inches of a dumbbell row. As such, just a little cheating allows the row to become more effective. In other words, we can make the dumbbell row much more effective by generating momentum at the bottom that can then carry over to the top. So with the dumbbell row, like all unilateral exercises, you should start with your non-dominant side to prevent muscle imbalances. Place your hand and knee on the bench with your other foot out further to the side to create a wide, stable base of support. To maximize range of motion on any row, your torso should be close to perpendicular with the line of pull, meaning your back should be somewhere between 0 to 20 degrees above parallel to the floor. Staying too upright might allow for heavier loading, but is going to seriously limit the range of motion that the lats can perform. Grab the dumbbell in the middle of the handle and lift your chest up, keeping your head in a neutral position. Try to keep your back straight and prevent it from rounding, and begin each rep by allowing your scapulae to protract at the bottom, which is going to allow the traps to work through a full range of motion as well. Allow the dumbbell to drift slightly forward, which is going to achieve more stretch on the lats while creating more consistent tension, preventing the dumbbell from stopping directly beneath the shoulder. From here, you want to think about dragging the dumbbell back in an arc instead of straight up. You should be pulling the dumbbell back toward your hips and then allowing it to come both down and forward under control on the negative. Now from the front, you can see that a completely strict row has the shoulders remaining completely horizontal with zero torso rotation. This is something I would advise against. Now, a complete bro row uses a lot of torso rotation to cheat the dumbbell all the way up and then just letting the weight fall on the negative, and that's something I also wouldn't recommend. But I think there is a middle ground here where a moderate amount of torso rotation can be used to assist the lats at their weakest point in the lift. This is going to allow other muscles to contribute more equally and prevent premature fatigue simply due to the lats' inability to complete a full range of motion. Now, when viewed from the top, you should be keeping your elbows in close to your torso rather than flaring them out to the side. If you find your biceps or your grip giving out before your back, you can try placing your pinky toward the back end of the dumbbell, or consider using straps to shift emphasis away from your grip and onto the muscles of the back that you're actually trying to target. Now, the dumbbell row can be used as both a heavy compound overloading movement and a mind-muscle connection type movement, so both low reps and high reps can be used. However, because you need to work each side separately to save on time and energy, I tend to stick with a more moderate rep zone, something around 8 to 12 reps per side. Now, in another Technique Tuesday video, I covered the pendlay row, which I prefer to perform as a much stricter row. So this type of row tends to be a more even mix of lats and traps, implying you may not stand to benefit quite as much from moderate cheating. Still, with the standing barbell row, where you have a more upright posture, moderate cheating can be helpful if you find your lats fatiguing early and preventing you from reaching that full scapular retraction at the top. But just be careful to put a cap on your cheating, since using momentum can create a slippery slope between true progressive overload and just progressive cheating. Briefly, when it comes to the cable row, whether or not I advise cheating depends on the grip being used. With a close neutral grip, because the lats will be more involved, I like to use a bit more momentum by leaning forward at the hips, allowing the spinal erectors of the lower back to assist the lats through the end range. With a wider grip, the row becomes more scapular retraction based, meaning more trap and rear delt involvement. And in this case, I like to keep a more upright posture, focusing on protracting my shoulder blades at the bottom and retracting them at the top. So I would say the most common error that I see on the dumbbell row is just losing control. While some momentum is acceptable, once you start getting your legs, calves, and the planted arm involved, it's just gonna turn into a completely different movement, and it's gonna rob tension from the back itself. And remember that the point of using momentum is to help even out the strength curve of the lats, not to move more weight just to impress your friends. And another very common error is staying too upright on dumbbell rows. Now, many lifters will use the dumbbell rack itself or the back of an incline bench, which I wouldn't recommend because you're only gonna be taking the lats through a partial range of motion. And to maximize the range of motion on any row, your torso should be close to perpendicular with the line of pull. This means you shouldn't lean too far back on a cable row, and you shouldn't be too upright on a dumbbell row. Now, a third error that I see mostly in new lifters is doing ultra strict rows. While being more strict can have its place, such as on a pendlay row or with a chest supported T-bar row, when it comes to dumbbell and cable rows, being overly cautious and rigid can seriously reduce overloading potential and even halt progression. And even just a little bit of cheating can transform the dumbbell row into a much more effective exercise. Now, for some context, I rarely go lighter than 80 to 100 pound dumbbells on rows. And if you've been in the gym for several years and are still using the lightest dumbbells on the rack, it might be time to loosen up a bit and start moving some more weight. So guys, I'm gonna leave it there for this one. Make sure you guys check out my video on training for back width versus back thickness for a little more insight on the various grip positions on these exercises. Don't forget to give Bro Jeff a follow over on Instagram. Leave the video a thumbs up if you found it helpful. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys all here in the next one.